Charles Xavier once said,
"Just because someone stumbles, loses their way, it doesn't mean they're lost forever. Sometimes we all need a little help."
That's what the finale of Miss Marvel was. It was that help. The final episode of Miss Marvel is the best episode of Miss Marvel. I gotta be real with you guys. After episode 4 and 5, I was starting to lose faith in this show. The first 3 episodes were good. I really liked them. It was, on par to be my favorite Disney Plus show. Episode 4 faltered a little bit, but it was still good, and I did not like episode 5 pretty much at all. I thought that was a very bad episode. And so I thought, there is no way on God's green earth that they can bring this home for a satisfying finale. I don't think I've ever been happier to be proven wrong. I loved almost everything about the finale of this show, and as always, there will be spoilers in this review. So if you have not yet seen the finale of Miss Marvel, go watch the finale of Miss Marvel and then come back and watch this review, because I am going to dive head first. I just got a text. I am going to be diving head first into a lot of the big spoilers. So this is the showdown episode. Damage Control is hunting Kamran, who has powers now, and Kamala has to defeat Damage Control and save Kamran. It's a very big twist from where we were at in episodes 4 and 5 with the clandestine, but they did very abruptly and anticlimactically kill the clandestine at the end of episode 5. So we need a new antagonist for the finale. Enter Damage Control. Now, they aren't great villains, but they were never really in a villain sense. They were supposed to just kind of be like the new S.H.I.E.L.D. That main chick is a bad person. Agent Cleary's just a guy doing his job. So I'm like, okay. It works. It works for the story they needed to tell. This is the reason Damage Control works better than Clandestine did as villains, is because Clandestine's another end-the-world threat. Damage Control is a more smaller scale threat. So I think that's why those first couple episodes were more compelling. Or one of the reasons those first couple episodes were more compelling is because Damage Control was an antagonist, as opposed to having these people from other dimensions who want the bangle back so they can return home and cover our world in their dimension. I couldn't even tell you what the clandestine want. All I know, I prefer Damage Control. Who Kamala has to fight against in the finale isn't what makes the finale great. It's the circumstances of that fight and how it affects the world around them. So Nakia tells Kamran and Kamala to hide inside the school, because no one will be there on a Saturday, so it's a good spot for them to set up shop, make camp, devise a plan to fight Damage Control, and then basically you have a group of teenagers fighting against a bunch of guys with guns in a school, and I just now realized why this episode has a content warning. Now, something this show was missing in the most recent 2 episodes was the charm that the first 2 had. The fun animations, the teen dynamic, Nakia, Zoe, Bruno, Kamala's family, all that stuff put together is what made those first 2 or 3 episodes, whatever it was, fantastic. And episode 6 goes back to that. We also see the return of Adil El-Arbi and Bilal Falal, I believe is how you pronounce their names. They come back to direct this finale, and it shows. We get, when Kamala's devising the plan and she's drawing on the whiteboard, we get the fun animation segueing into live action bits. Her family is the forefront of this episode, and it's literally just an episode with Bruno, Nakia, Zoe, and Kamala. It's what made the first 2 episodes great, as the forefront of this one. I do think it would have been cooler, though, if the whole show was in Jersey City and a season 2 went to Karachi in Pakistan, because we get to be in Jersey enough for it to feel like its own character. In the comics, it supposedly feels like a character. It felt like character in the episodes where she was in Jersey City. So the whole city, rising up against Damage Control and protesting this outside the school, would have had more impact had we've been here the entire time. But I'll take what I can get at this point. I would like to apologize for my comments in my review of episode 5, in which I stated that Kamala Khan and Kamran are related, and it was a disgusting thing because they were clearly, romantically attracted to each other. And I would like to apologize for that. They are clearly not related because in this episode they come dangerously close to kissing. So my bad and my apologies. There are 2 things I didn't love in this episode. Unfortunately, the finale it wasn't perfect. It was almost perfect, but it wasn't quite perfect. But I do feel that the writers did the best they could given the 6-episode mandate, and I don't know how they could have made, well, I know one of the things they could have done to make it a bit better, but I don't know what they really could have done to make this finale better, given that they only had 6 episodes to tell this story. Kamran's story is an interesting one. So he gets powers in the end of episode 5. He's now on the run, being hunted by damage control, and he starts to get really ruthless, and he starts to get very close to killing people, and it results in him and Kamala trading a few blows. Now this felt out of character, because up until this episode, Kamran has always been such a nice guy. He seemed like a guy who would never hurt a fly. Now I get, when you're betrayed by your own family and then attacked by the government and you're on the run, I get how that might affect you, but I wish they had, just had a bit more time to develop the tragedy of Kamran, because his story is a tragic one. If you really go back and chart his story, they just don't have the proper time to tell it. The second thing I didn't love in this episode can best be described like this, okay? The good guys are about to lose. They're like 5 seconds away from losing. Hero jumps in an epic slow-mo shot and uses their powers to hold off the bad guys while triumphant music plays. And then once the slow-mo shot's over, Hero gets their butt kicked. That happened like 5 times in this episode. Kamala would jump in right when the good guys were about to lose. She would do something cool with her powers to hold them off. And then once the slow-mo shot ended, Kamala was defeated. And then rinse and repeat. It wasn't that cool. It feels like I don't like when they do that, because it feels like forced excitement rather than just letting the story tell itself and naturally getting excited. When I see an epic slow-mo shot like that, it's essentially the laugh track of action movies. It's telling you how you're supposed to feel, instead of, just telling the story and letting you feel that eventually. I've always thought that was cheap. It's cheap here, and they do it so many times here. I think the only time it really worked for me was when Kamala jumped out of the building and landed between damage control and Kamran and put up the shield, and they were like shooting bits of the shield off and it would regenerate, and then you had Kamala's family on the other side freaking out because, she came dangerously close to getting shot. I think that's the only time it worked because of how well they actually blended the emotion into that, but the rest of it felt unnecessary. I assure you what I'm about to say is a compliment. This episode felt like episode 6 of Kenobi, where they take a bunch of plot threads, both good and bad, some handled very well, some very, very poorly, and they try to bring it all together in a satisfying way. In fact, I had to check if Andrew Stanton wrote this episode, because he saved Kenobi, and I was wondering if he saved Miss Marvel. He did not. But they do. They wrap up things with Zoe, and she has a redemption arc, if you can call it that, because she was kind of a little bitch. She kind of gets redeemed, and she's one of Kamala's friends now. They resolve, there's some drama between Naki and Kamala that they discuss and resolve in this episode. Clandestine is still important and leads to some conflict with Kamran and Kamala, but ultimately that's resolved in a satisfying way too. They wrap up everything very satisfyingly. There was also a nice nod to the comics where Kamala says "embiggen" at some point, and she has big arms. I liked that. It was a nice way to pay homage to what G. Willow Wilson and the artists over at Marvel did when they created that character. But the last 10 minutes of this episode is where it really got perfect, and in my opinion it's up there with Avengers Endgame and Spider-Man No Way Home in terms of great endings in the MCU. It was very memorable, and it got my emotions going. The people of Jersey City rally behind her, even the damage control officers. They go against their commanding officer, and then she ends up losing her job, which was objectively the best thing in this show. And there's a montage of the community of all the people that have like been important thus far, have had speaking roles, talk about Nightlight, because she doesn't have a name yet, so they're just talking about her, and like Zoe and Nakia talk about her, the Euro guy talks about her, that one kid that she saved in episode 2 talks about her. It's cool, and there's just all of them like posting stuff on social media, but it's the conversation with her dad on the roof that really left an impact on me. That got the emotions going, and it was the best of Miss Marvel's writing, and it showed just the amazing potential this show can have when they're focused and they take it slow and they're not rushing along. And it's what I was missing in the last couple episodes, and it reminded me of why I love this show so much. Her dad has a great quote that was unfortunately in one of the trailers, so it kind of took away from it, but he basically says, if you save one life, you save the world. Beautiful quote. And Kamala mentions that she does not yet have a superhero name. And I'm like, well, she has to get Miss Marvel in this episode. She has to. And her dad's talking about how they picked out Kamala. And he says, I don't have the exact quote, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, we named you Kamala because in Arabic, Kamal means something like perfect. But in Urdu, it means marvel. He says, you're our own little Miss Marvel. And that was the bit that played with my emotions. And that's how Kamala Khan gets her superhero name. It has meaning to her. And it connects to Captain Marvel, something she even mentions, that she's related to Carol freaking Danvers. And for me, this episode could have ended with her sitting on the lamppost. The shot at the end of the trailer, I knew it was going to be the last shot of the show. So it could have ended there, honestly. If I was like doing this episode, I would have ended it there and made the last 2 things post-credit scenes. But I get the need to do more. So it fast forwards a week later, and Bruno, Kamala, and Nakia are gonna go hang out, and Bruno's like, hey, I analyzed your DNA again. It's not like everyone else. It seems like you have a mutation. And then the X-Men 97 theme plays. So Kamala Khan's a mutant, ladies and gentlemen. The first mutant has been introduced in the MCU. I'm wondering if they'll retcon her into Inhuman later. I hope not. Just, if you want to make her something, stick with it. If you're going to make her a mutant instead of an Inhuman, stick with it. Don't change it later. And it makes sense, since, I mean, she never went through Terrigenesis. Why would she be an Inhuman? She is a mutant. And then it ends with them riding down into the street. It's like they ride off into the sunset, but there is one more thing. I'm going to be honest here. The post-credit scene, I would have preferred if the ending scene was a post-credit scene. But I'll take it. Because it ties into the movie and all that they did need to do. But by that point, I was like, I'm good. I don't even need a post-credit scene on this show. But the post-credit scene's Kamala lying on her bed when her bracelet starts glowing, and she gets up, and she's like sucked into her closet in like a wormhole or something, and switches spots with Captain Marvel. So something about that bangle links them, and so it's safe to assume Kamala Khan got launched into space. Captain Marvel is in Kamala's bedroom with a very cheap-looking suit. I liked her Captain Marvel suit a lot. That's like my favorite thing about that movie, and they change it in every appearance. And then Captain Marvel freaks out, leaves, and it says Miss Marvel will return in The Marvels, which is coming out in a year. Look, here's the thing. This finale did what I didn't think would be possible, and it got me excited for the Marvels. It got me excited to see Captain Marvel. And if you guys know me, you know that's not an easy feat, because I hate that character. And also, when this episode ended, I just remember thinking, this show, probably more than any other show, deserves a second season. Just after the Marvels, give me a second season of Miss Marvel. This and Moon Knight, definitely. But I think this could use it more. That's debatable. But I do want a second season of this show. I think there's still so much stuff they can do. So, I will have a full review of this series up in a few days. I do have a busy week, but I should have it up soon. We'll see how long it takes me, so stay tuned for that. But what did you guys think of the season series, whatever they're doing, finale of Miss Marvel? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, leave a like on this video, subscribe, click on the bell icon to receive all notifications from the MCU HQ. That's going to be it. Have a great day, guys.